Man, this sport is so precise, and accuracy means everything. Hi everyone, it's the Four Gun Guy. And today I'm going to talk about the Four Gun Guy's theory of relativity. I was looking at reloading and the accuracy of my rifle and working up a new cartridge and what all went into that. And then I started thinking about some times that I kind of freaked out a little bit when numbers that I thought I should see weren't there. And it was because I had changed equipment. So I wanted to go over 4 areas and 4 basic tools and talk about that, right? So we don't freak out or we don't get kind of nervous when we change, say, comparators. Or when we take a different measurement, use a different process or method to measure the distance to our lands, right? In a new barrel, in our worn barrel, whatever that might be. Or when we're talking about a chronograph, when we're taking measurements out at the range with our chronograph. And maybe a buddy comes up with his and says, hey, I'm getting something different. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, I want to end up with this little gadget here. And when we're at a match and someone comes off the stage and they've just shot the stage, and what's the first thing we all ask them? What was your wind, right? We all ask the same question. But the answer they give isn't the answer we want. We need to ask them the right question so they give us an answer that's relative to this, and the cartridge. So let's go ahead and down this journey. And if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Let's start with the comparators, all right? I have 3 gauges here because I'm just lazy and I don't like to change comparators between the gauges. But I have a headspace gauge and I have a cartridge base to ogive measurement comparator. And then I have just my regular cartridge overall length gauge. And this is, as I said, I think I said gauge when I meant comparator here. But let's talk about this. We fire a piece of brass, we fire it 3 times, and it will fire form to our chamber in our rifle. So after that 3rd firing or thereabouts, when I take this cartridge out, this is my chamber, right? It has formed to the chamber. We use this headspace comparator to come in here and say, well, if this is conforming to the chamber and it's 1.1395 and I want to bump this shoulder back 0.02 of an inch to get me some clearance in case a grain of sand, a blade of grass, something gets in there, then I'm going to resize my brass. And when I take that measurement using this comparator, I should be at 1.375, 0.02 of an inch shorter, right? I can promise you that if you take this comparator off and get a different brand of headspace comparator and put it on here, those aren't going to be your numbers. And the reason is all these comparators, most of them, are going to sit differently somewhere on the shoulder. So it's all relative to the comparator you're using. That's what I'm trying to say here. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I kind of freaked out a little bit because I changed comparators, and when I put the new comparator on and I had all my old numbers written down, they weren't the same. And for a second there, I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. Then I realized that the new comparator was sitting somewhere different on the shoulder. And it didn't matter because as long as I got that measurement after with my fired case, bumped back 0.02 of an inch with that comparator as the measuring device, then I was fine. Okay? That's all I'm trying to get to here is don't kind of get freaked out if you do change things and the numbers aren't there. Same thing with your CBTO, cartridge-based ogive measurement, right? If I come in here with this one, now this is a little different though. If I come in here with this one and I put it on this bullet, on this case, and I measure it, right? If I get another comparator, it should be pretty darn close to this, right? It should almost be exact because they are trying to, for this, let me rephrase that, for this bullet, right? This is a Sierra Match King 107 grain. If I use this ogive comparator and I use a different ogive comparator, they should be relatively in the same place, okay? If I change bullets to a Hornady 108 grain ELDM, it's going to be a different measurement, right? So that's the other thing. Make sure that you understand that it's the bullet can change what different comparators are giving you, or even the same comparator is giving you, because the ogive of a 108 ELDM is going to be in a different location than the ogive of the Sierra Match King. And that's because these bullet manufacturers are trying to optimize the ballistic coefficient, or the BC, of their bullet. So it could be different. So again, if I'm changing bullets, I've got to change my thinking of the measurements I'm going to take as well. And then the last thing is, and this has to do with the bullet as well, is the cartridge overall length, or overall length. And this is going to change depending on the bullet that I'm seating here, right? This is the Sierra Match King. The Hornady 108 ELDM will be different. In fact, I believe the ELDM is longer than this bullet. So that will be different. Now we're gonna come to our next section, which is really finding the lands, and that's a whole nother topic that I want to talk to you about from a relativity standpoint. Finding the lands. Wow, this can be a tricky topic, but I've used two different methods, right? I've used the Wheeler method, which is you basically take your bolt apart, take all the springs and the ejector and everything off of it, and then you are going to seat a bullet in a case, and you're going to keep running that bullet down into the case until this bolt falls freely, right? Or very close to falling freely. That's given me a really good indication of where the lands are, right? Because that's really what we're trying to find. Brand new barrel, I want to know where the lands are, and then we're going to start from there with our load development. This barrel has about 1,600 rounds through it, and I just went through the exercise of re-finding the lands. But I didn't use the Wheeler method. I used the Hornady, what is this? OAL gauge, right? Overall length gauge. This is a really handy device, but it doesn't give you the same numbers, okay? So again, all relative. It should give you a very close number to the Wheeler method, and/or the Wheeler method should give you a close number to this, but it's not. And some people say they do not like this method because you can inadvertently kind of jam the bullet into the lands and you don't get a true reading of where things are. Now I want to talk to the relativity part here. I'm going to work up a case, a cartridge. I have already found the powder charge that I want to use for that cartridge and for that bullet. I'm going to go with a Hornady 108 ELDM. And now I'm going to work on the seating depth. Now, in my 6.5 Creedmoor, my 140 grain ELDMs loved about a 60,000th of an inch jump. I started there with this in my initial powder charge test, and it really was it really was good. I got a really tight group, and so I'm starting there, but I'm going to go either side probably about in 4,000ths increments, three down and 3 up, right? So, but with that said, here's the thing. And guys, when I make this statement, I do not make it saying throw safety out the window. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to tell you is you're never going to find the lands. You're not going to find that exact measurement of the lands, okay, with the methods we use. Now, if I sent this off to some gunsmith who had just a fancy device for doing that and he could find them, and that would be great. But with me, I really don't care if this is 5/1000ths different than the Wheeler method. I don't care, because I'm going to do the workup of my seating depth anyway. I might sit here when I'm all said and done and tell you, hey, yeah, I loaded that ELDM 65/1000ths off the lands, and I had a 4/1000th here on the low side and a 4/1000th on the high side range that I know now I can erode the lands that much and it's still going to be shooting good, or a 10,000th or a 12,000th. It doesn't matter. I'm saying 60,000ths, but it might actually be 64,000ths. It could be 70,000ths. Who cares? I'm after the group. Do I get a good group? Are my SDs and ESs within the range that I've set for myself to be successful? If the answer to those is yes, then I really don't care what that number is. It's relative for what I'm trying to accomplish. That's my point. We're trying to get this bullet to come out of this rifle at 900 yards and hit a sometimes one MOA target, which is this big. And that's what my goal is. That is the goal. I'm going to stay within safety measurements, within safety guidelines, but a lot of this stuff just is relative. So my point to you is, if you want to use one of these gauges, which is what I'm doing now because I'm getting kind of lazy, I use this gauge. It works well. I take about 10 readings with it. I don't just put it up there and take one reading. Oh, there's my lands. I take about 10 readings with it, and I get a very good range that's generally within 3/1000ths of an inch. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about, the relativity of finding the lands. Let's talk about the chronograph real quickly. This is another one that kind of threw me for a loop when I first started using it. I use a magneto speed. Some of my buddies use lab radars. And here's the reality. This is going to give you a lot of great information, right? What we hope to glean from the readings we get from this chronograph are velocities, feet per second, SDs, standard deviations, and ESs, extreme spreads. This is going to give me a range of velocities, but that range only gives me a starting point, because the reality of it is, what are we going to do next? We're going to true our dope, right? So when I'm done with all of that, the powder charge, the seating depth, and I've gotten my good group that I want, my low SDs, my low ESs, I have found that load. Now I go to the range and I have to true my dope. I do that at 850 yards. So I'm going to start walking out 500, 600, 700, 800, and I end at 850. And I adjust in my device or my ballistics app at every one of those stages. When I get to 850, I'm close enough to where I have to make minor adjustments, and all I adjust for my use, some of you are going to be different here, all I adjust is my velocity. I'm using a custom curve from Applied Ballistics. So that's all I adjust in my Kestrel. Some of you may adjust other things, and that's great. But I adjust the velocity up and down. So my point to you for this whole section is, this thing may say my cartridge loves, or my rifle loves 2770 feet per second. But the reality of it is to make that bullet impact that 850-yard target on the waterline 5 times in a row, I may had to have put 2792 in my Kestrel. So it's all relative. Don't get hung up when you start getting to that stage. Don't get hung up on, well, that's what this thing is telling me. That doesn't matter. It's a good starting point, but it's not going to be the ending point for you. And the same thing with other factors of this. If you're adjusting your BC, if you're adjusting other aspects of your ballistics app or ballistics device to get your dope trued, you're doing the same thing, right? You've got a starting point, and then you're adjusting it up and down to get to that target. So while I'm just using velocity as that relative mark, you may be using something else. So that's all I wanted to mention on the chronograph aspect of things. And now we're at the wind aspect of things, and that's another relative thing. 2 guys ahead of me, the guy shoots, comes off the line. I let him settle down for a minute or two. Then I go over to him and I say, what? Well, generally what people say is, what was your wind? And his answer will be 3/10 left. Okay? You asked the wrong question, right? You asked the wrong question. I have no idea what he's shooting. He could be a 6.5 Creedmoor. He could be a 308. He could be a 6-dasher running at 3,100 feet per second. I run at 2,770 per second. His 3/10 means nothing to me. The question I should be asking him is, what wind value, what wind speed got you on target? And his response would be 4 miles an hour, full value. Okay, great. So I don't care what he shot, because when he did his workup in his ballistics device, he came up with 4 miles an hour, full value, got his 3,200 feet per second on the target. I don't want to know what your scope or your hold was, what you dialed. I don't want to know any of that. It's going to mess with me up here. I just want to know the wind value. So then I can start to validate what he's saying. Did the wind die between what he just told me and when he shot? Did it pick up? I look down at the target again. I look around. I take another measurement on my Kestrel. Is it coming up relatively similar to what he just told me? And then I go from there. But my point to you is, from a wind value perspective, ask them what the wind speed was that got them on target, right? And then that relatively relates back to your cartridge, your rifle, and your ballistics that you have in your device or your app. Well, let's go ahead and get to final thoughts. Well, look, I know this can be confusing, and I tried my best to kind of unconfuse it for us all. But some of this stuff really took me a while to wrap my head around, and especially the whole comparator thing and all the readings that I was getting, and then the whole chronograph with the ballistics calculator. I'm telling you, a couple of years ago when I first started out in all this, this really got me spun around the axle. I mean, it did, because I kept taking the reading from this thing, and then I'd come in here to this thing and I'd say, but that's the reading. Why am I not hitting that target? Why at 850 is my dope not trued, right? All this stuff it wouldn't lie to me. It's telling me the truth. And it just took me a while to understand how it all fits together, how it's all relative based on what I'm doing with it and how I need to get it to get me on target. So I want to thank you for watching another one. I hope this kind of opened up some eyes out there and is getting you thinking a little bit about all this stuff. So yeah, thanks for hanging in there. The comments, the likes, subscriptions, I really appreciate all of it, guys. And until next time, shoot straight.